Are we confronting disaster? After all, NASA specialists had given the all-clear for the asteroid Apophis and determined that it will simply miss us in 5 years. But now, a new study by Canadian cosmologist Paul White has concluded that the 350-meter-wide rock might still adjust its trajectory and take an unfortunate detour. But how likely is it that Apophis will crash into a smaller object and then put its sights on Earth? What might the results of this be? Assuming the worst. And if it came to that, would there be anything we could do to prevent an impact? On June 19, 2004, astronomers Roy Tucker, David J. Tholen, and Fabrizio Bernardi gave the world two things: the knowledge that a previously unknown asteroid was orbiting out there, and all-out media frenzy. The celestial body, Apophis, immediately made headlines as an alleged killer asteroid that would come dangerously close to Earth on April 13, 2029, a Friday the 13th, no less. There's no doubt that the name of the 350-meter-wide space rock doesn't bode well. After all, Apophis shares its name with the ancient Egyptian god of chaos and darkness. Leaving aside all the ominous connotations, the initial assessments by NASA specialists gave cause for concern. According to these assessments, the impact probability in December 2004 was estimated at 1 in 37, or 2.7%. To put this into perspective, this is the highest value for an asteroid of this size that has been reached on the Turin risk scale to date. Indeed, the corresponding impact probabilities at that time referred not only to the year 2029, but also to the years 2036 and 2068. We probably don't need to mention here what the media reaction was in the face of these figures. However, today, 20 years later, the editorial and galactic attitudes have long since calmed down. Thanks to detailed follow-up studies, it's now considered improbable that Apophis will collide with Earth in 5 years, unless something unexpected occurs in the coming months that undermines all mathematical considerations. What is certain, anyway, is that the impact of Apophis would probably not invoke a global catastrophe, as did the asteroid that brought about the end of the dinosaurs 66 million years ago, because the object is simply too small for that. Tragically, however, the consequences of a hit would still be enormous. According to scientists, the impact crater alone would be several kilometers in diameter, and the force of the crash would be strong enough to devastate an area the size of Central Europe. Specifically, researchers suspect that Apophis would release energy equivalent to 900 million tons of TNT. In comparison, the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima on August 6, 1945, had an explosive power of only 15,000 tons of TNT. Although these figures are both amazing and alarming, the energy of the hypothetical asteroid impact would need to be multiple times greater to annihilate the entire surface of the Earth. Experts generally expect that the immediate kill zone would have a width of 250 kilometers. However, the specific impact outcomes would depend primarily on where the asteroid crashes to Earth. If Apophis were to collide with the ocean, it could cover the nearby coasts under a massive wave over 100 meters high. Moreover, in the low-lying hinterland, it would kill countless living organisms. Might Apophis someday hit Earth? The good news, however, is that as things stand, what we have just heard is merely a dreadful hypothetical scenario. As previously mentioned, current trajectory observations indicate that Apophis will barely miss Earth. The word barely in this context means a distance of 32,000 kilometers, so in 2029, the asteroid will pass underneath the geostationary orbit. However, the all-clear regarding an impact comes with a little but potentially crucial caveat. Apophis will only pass Earth if its trajectory remains unchanged. The likelihood of a change in orbit is low, but not zero. That's not all. In fact, astronomers have confirmed that the asteroid is currently in the process of changing its orbit. The radiation pressure of the Sun is shifting it by around 170 meters each year. Luckily, this shift isn't enough to direct Apophis toward Earth in 2029. Sadly, it could lead to a collision during a later passage. And there's also some possibly unsettling news. Even the best current projections can't rule out the probability of Apophis being hit by a smaller asteroid. Canadian astronomer Paul White from the University of Western Ontario explains that such an impact could transfer enough force to lethally redirect Apophis. NASA's DART mission stunningly demonstrated how an asteroid can be redirected. As part of the mission, the DART spacecraft acted as a flying battering ram and crashed into the surface of the 1,065-meter wide asteroid moon Didymos. While this deliberate diversion was nothing more than a massive test, such a push in the case of Apophis might actually have serious consequences. As mentioned, the diversion of the asteroid was calculated back in 2020. And considering this, one could imagine that the specialists would be well advised to keep a close eye on Apophis. And that's precisely what they would do, provided they can still observe the asteroid in reality. However, Apophis has been out of our natural view since 2021, and it won't move back into it until 2027. This is for the simple reason that the asteroid is currently moving close to the Sun, making it invisible even to the most powerful telescopes. So what happens in the meantime is uncertain, and we won't know how much it has changed its orbit until a maximum of 2 years before its flyby. Luckily, direct observations are not the only way to assess the risk of diversion. Using a model simulation, Paul White has analyzed what precisely would need to occur for Apophis to pose a threat to us. After all, the astronomer's first task was to determine the potentially hazardous size of the battering ram asteroid. Previous studies had already shown that Apophis's orbit would have to be altered by around 200 kilometers to allow it to enter the next keyhole, which refers to a small zone close to Earth, where the Earth's gravitational pull would redirect Apophis in 2029 enough to put our planet squarely in its sights when it next shows up in 2036. If you think it would take a colossal giant to direct Apophis through the keyhole, you're mistaken. In fact, a collision with an object only 60 centimeters across would be sufficient. Such a collision would change the asteroid's speed by around 3/10,000ths of a meter per second. Preparing for the main shift of 200 kilometers, the conditions for an impact in April 2029 are somewhat different. For this, the speed of Apophis would have to change by about 500,000ths of a meter per second, meaning it would need to collide with an object around 3.4 meters in size. For us residents of Earth, it is somewhat reassuring that a mere impact alone wouldn't be enough. Also, the collision would have to happen at a specific time and with the correct direction. On probabilities and potential knowledge, there's no doubt that this is all very possible. But how likely is it? Well, in this regard, White points out that around 140 60-centimeter wide objects hit the Earth every year, while there's only one object with a diameter of 3.4 meters converted into the significantly smaller cross-section of Apophis. This means that the likelihood of the asteroid entering the keyhole due to an impact is 1 in 1 million. The calculated likelihood of an impact in 2029 is even lower. According to White, it's 1 in 100 million. Moreover, considering that only 5% of the hits from a 3.4-meter wide object provide a force in the definitive direction, the corresponding likelihood drops even further to under 1 in 2 billion. As we can see, the risk of an impact is quite reasonable from a purely mathematical perspective. But if, against all odds, the asteroid comes into close contact with Earth, our number games will no longer help us. Since this scenario cannot be entirely ruled out, it's all the more important for scientists to monitor Apophis's trajectory as precisely as possible. Again, starting from February 2027, when it comes into our field of vision, a deviation of more than a few tenths of a second of arc could indicate a disturbance in its orbit. However, according to White, this doesn't necessarily mean that the asteroid is on a collision course with Earth. In fact, further investigations and analyses would be prudent, and research is currently underway to develop a small satellite to accompany Apophis during its Earth passage. After all, we should not forget one thing. Despite all the calculations, Apophis also offers scientists a huge opportunity for data collection, as an approach of a chunk of this size happens only once every few decades on average. The passage also presents researchers with the unique opportunity to study a near-Earth asteroid up close. And by the way, when Apophis enters our domain, it will reveal itself as a small, gleaming dot in the night sky. Now, you can easily make yourself known with a little click. Press like and subscribe to never miss another video from us. We'll see you soon.